A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I'm willing to talk about again. So for today, we're gonna have to buckle down nice and tightly, because what we're gonna do today is we are gonna be covering the first 4 films in the Ice Age series. Yeah, one of Blue Sky Studios' finest franchises to date, and also by far their longest running series to date. Even beyond the time that they had gone defunct in March 2021, because, well, less than a year later, we got a reboot from Disney themselves after they managed to pick up the project itself, shortly after Blue Sky had gone defunct. But of course, I'm not really here to talk about the adventures of Buck Wild, because how could I properly give it a review? Even after watching it, it still didn't really make much sense for me to critique it properly. With all the people talking a lot of horrible things about the Ice Age series, I'd say it's time that we go back to our roots. I'm just going to get started by talking about Ice Age from 2002. This is the same year that a multitude of other films out there that I've known over the years have also come out. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, John Q, Treasure Planet, 8 Crazy Nights, and many others pretty much. Even Air Bud pretty much had a sequel in 2002 called 7th Inning Fetch, which is probably my most remembered as a child. But, of course, we're not really going to talk about many of those, at least for right now. We're actually going to talk a bit about this. Ice Age, the first Blue Sky Studios film that made a rather big success. It would eventually lead to the likes of other well-known Blue Sky films like Robots, Horton Hears Who, and many other things out there. But going back to 2002, it was a bit of a different time when CG had not necessarily fully adapted in the same way that we got to see it today. Of course, at the time, in the year 2002, Monsters, Inc. was at the time the latest installment in Pixar's film lineup. Of course, in 2002, they actually made a short featurette known as Mike's New Car, which of course would come out at that time. But when talking about Ice Age, it's a bit of a whole different story. It not only became the start to what would eventually lead to a huge number of sequels. I mean, it's crazy just to know the fact that apparently we have this many Ice Age films to date. And yet, there's actually been talks about more sequels in the works. So how strange can it possibly be? Well, you know what? I'd say here, even at the very beginning, when people thought that this was a good series, that at least started well, almost too well, it turned into a series of memes and the like, but Ice Age from 2002 is simply put about a group of animals living in the Ice Age, a chronological time period on Earth where there was nothing but snow, ice, animals, ice, snow, ice, snow, and more ice and snow. Do I need to go on any further? Well, it's simple. The plot revolves around a group of friends. A woolly mammoth known as Manny, whom is played by the one and only Raymond. I tell you, Raymond Romano. The same guy who was, of course, in Everybody Loves Raymond. And then, of course, we certainly can't forget about the likes of other well-known actors like Queen Latifah, who plays Manny's woolly mammoth friend, Ellie. And then, of course, there's John Leguizamo as a sloth known as Sid. Then there's a saber-toothed tiger. And then, of course, there's a duo known as Crash and Eddie, who most people consider to be the most annoying of the bunch. But let's be real here. Lots of things have happened in the Ice Age series since day one. And in this particular installment, when they first began, it was as simple as this. A group of animals are traveling together when they unexpectedly have an encounter with a human baby, who ends up getting lost from the rest of his family and other friends. So the rest of the entire film is set around these animals, from the saber-tooth to the mammoths, returning the baby back to his original family. So it's basically a plot that's rather simple, yet it was rather effective at this point in time. It's not like nowadays where very, very, very simple plot lines that you can only describe in a short sentence were not necessarily seen as boring. In the early 2000s, we didn't necessarily have a whole lot to do with our whole lives. But now we do have access to a lot of things out there. From streaming platforms to renting to buying to visiting film stores, etc., etc. All kinds of departments you could easily browse with your own eyes and ears. But in any case though, this was the first film that inevitably started a series because it was rather effective to the point where it became very successful in the box office and received a lot of good reviews from most critics. So much so that it actually spawned a sequel 4 years later in 2006 with Ice Age: The Meltdown, the second film in the series. But in the year 2006, a lot had changed in terms of CG. So by this point in time, they were actually able to amp up their game and really work on the details and plenty of other stuff that they could work on. So Blue Sky Studios was able to make the films look better as the years went on. Just like with most other film franchises in the CGI world itself. They were able to have a natural evolution take place in terms of adding more money to their making and to have more complex detailing and a lot of other unique special effects added into the mix. But Ice Age 2: The Meltdown is yet another one of those examples of a shortened, simple plot that could easily be described all in one sentence. So, let's just go ahead and explain it. Ice Age 2: The Meltdown is a film from 2006 that once again stars the likes of Ray Romano, Queen Latifah, John Leguizamo, etc. The plot is simply like this. The animals that were from the previous film are now in a setting that simply tells us that the Ice Age is about to come to an end, threatening the many, many, many lives of many prehistoric animals of all sorts on planet Earth. A meltdown is taking place. And as such, they have to find another cold place to go to spend their lives in before it could get possibly any worse. Because when you have a meltdown, you have to worry about a lot of things. There could be avalanches coming around, torrents going around, icicles could break off and fall down until they might hit you, or something else entirely. As well as a whole bunch of other things. So right off of the bat, this film does give us a whole different look compared to how the last one did. The last one was about rescuing a lost child and returning him to his family, and this one is about the supposed mass extinction that killed off a good majority of the animals living on Earth during the Ice Age itself. So it pretty much kicks it into high gear. And by this point in time, it's clear that a lot of things out there were probably going to happen. But just like with the last film, at least for a sequel, this one also did relatively well in the box office and did get some reviews from critics, but this time it was a bit of a different game. It was the first sign that even though that it probably wouldn't have worked all too well, Blue Sky Studios still would have gone as far as they'll go ahead and create more sequels. So by all means, do consider the fact that because of how much the Ice Age series has progressed, it's safe to say that we probably shouldn't expect them to stop with these kinds of productions. They're simply going to milk them until they're dry. This kind of property might have been very, very popular over the years, but the Ice Age films have not really aged as much as they should, nor have they gone well. So by any means, do I consider them to be good? Well, I could watch the whole entire series if I could, and maybe get a good, clear understanding of how exactly did it go from being so good to being so bad. With the latest installment, The Adventures of Buck Wild, which is a Disney Plus original / exclusive, I cannot necessarily picture how could the future of the Ice Age franchise itself possibly go any further. But yet, this was something that Blue Sky Studios themselves had planned out before going defunct in 2021. So now that Disney is officially picking up on their trash and their leftovers and simply starting anew by using their projects for their own personal gain, well, this is what we are going to see in the future. But is there going to be a sequel to The Adventures of Buck Wild, which is supposedly like a reboot of the franchise? Well, I can't really be sure about that, but one thing's for certain. Companies will do whatever they can to milk any kind of franchise that they possibly can, just because they go ahead and make billions of dollars. We've seen how Michael Bay went ahead and did it with the Transformers films, and we've definitely seen how the likes of Joss Whedon, the Russo brothers, etc. have milked the crap out of all sorts of Marvel characters that we've known since the age of the comic book came around. And the fact that many of which are still going these days is just ridiculous. But yet, what can we do to stop? What can we possibly do to stop it altogether? Hollywood is a huge, huge industry when it comes to filmmaking. It's been around for over a century. And so, there's not much else I could possibly touch up on any of this. But yet, do be back here tomorrow so that way I can talk about the third and the fourth films from the Ice Age series as a whole. And so with that in mind, if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.